Hey everyone! Before we dive in, we want to give a big shout out to TACA, the Arts Community Alliance, and Moody Fund for the Arts. This season of Dance Behind the Screen podcast is powered in part by their support. Because of them, you're getting free episodes wherever you listen, full video interviews on YouTube, and our amazing guests receive an artist stipend. If you love what we do and want to support the work, head over to knowvoxdance.com. All right, let's get into it.
No Box Dance presents Dance Behind the Screen, process production, and social media. Don't forget, say no to the box. Dile no a la caja. 고정관념 일의 상자에서 벗어나세요.
Welcome to Dance Behind the Screen, where dance, technology, and creativity converge. I'm your host, Martheya, and today's episode is a compelling dive into how emotional nuance, artistic leadership, and choreographic clarity intersect on and off the screen. Our guest today is Emi Matsushita, a creative entrepreneur, educator, and seasoned dance professional with over 28 years of global experience. Emi blends movement, science, and leadership to empower artists through coaching and entrepreneurship. Emi, welcome to our show. I'm excited to be here.
Thank you for having me.
Well, let's go ahead and dive right in. You have a very unique background blending science, business, and the arts. So how does this multidisciplinary lens really influence you and your leadership style today?
Oh man, how does it influence? It's like, it is what it is, because for me, all of these things I really enjoy. I'm like curious about them. I'm on my own journey with getting more knowledge, getting more information, practicing, and going through all those iterations. And so, I mean, it influences me because it's already integrated into me. I'm practicing what I'm preaching, coaching myself, and all of these things. So, yeah, I feel like as a result of all of these disciplines, I guess I'm a little biased, but I feel like I'm a good mix of all of these things to be able to create balance and alternative perspectives and a critical lens to anything that I approach, which is good. It's very valuable in a lot of contexts.
Certainly. And one of the reasons I really wanted to have you on the podcast, and especially this season, is I love how you talk about dance entrepreneurship. Our theme this season is about strategic planning. And in the first episode of the season, we really dive deep into how No Box Dance has worked hard this past year to build our strategic plan and just be really intentional and clear. What is our mission, vision, and values? And what are the steps to making sure that we achieve those? And I'd love to hear a little bit more like history and context around your interest in being a dance entrepreneur.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Thank you for asking that question, because I feel like I believe that all dancers and all creatives are entrepreneurs. We just have this like gap in whether it be our training or our education that we don't actually connect with that identity often. It was a long journey for me to even, first of all, believe and own the fact that I'm an artist. If I really want to make a livelihood out of art and continue creating it in a way that can return value to me, then I'm an entrepreneur, trading my goods and services for money in return. And so it really took me just a lot of time of introspection and also looking back and relating to dance in a way where I was like, oh, wow, like now that I want to do this, like, how do I do it? And seeing the gaps and realizing that younger Emi, like, she actually didn't go to school for dance. She didn't follow the traditional pathway with dance. I was thinking that dance was just a hobby. It wasn't a safe bet. And so my trajectory took me into science. But if I had a mentor like me when I was little Emi and at a point in my life where I was deciding what to do for the rest of my life, I feel like I probably would have leaned into dance more, because it could have been, it would have been more solid knowing that if I'm choosing dance, I'm becoming an entrepreneur. I'm not just becoming an artist who's just like la 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 in the arts and whatnot. So yeah, it took a long time for me to claim it and to really start then realizing that I had gaps to fill, and then choosing a path that allowed me more access to education, intentionally getting like business coaching, seeking resources, etc.
Yeah, you did. And it's so interesting. I love how you talk about it took you time to claim kind of that part of your identity as an entrepreneur. And I think I do have a little bit more of a traditional path, getting a BFA, then an MFA in dance. And
Right.
there's so much emphasis focused on the artistry. And we do take a lot of courses that are complementary to kind of, I guess, understanding the business side of it. But oftentimes there's kind of a gap in knowledge if you're an independent artist and let's say you're not affiliated with an organization or a nonprofit, and you can kind of feel like you're floating around.
Yeah.
And you might have a community, but it's like there's no like clear path, clear steps. Like maybe some people have in other careers, like a doctor or a nurse or something like that. It's really clear trajectory. You do this, then you do this. And it's kind of laid out for you. You're listening to Dance Behind the Screen podcast. Let's explore the future of dance together. So what I would love to talk with you about is, what do you think those steps might be? Or are there like clear frameworks? Like you said, you want to give this advice, to little Emi. I think that's something that we really want to create for our listeners of this podcast, is just offering them different pathways and bringing those resources to them to just make it easy to achieve and a little bit more practical. Because oftentimes, and I'd be curious to hear if you felt this way, it's like, what do I do? Like when we were starting No Box, it was really scary. We were first like a sole proprietorship just because we wanted to protect ourselves in some capacity. And then we eventually did become a nonprofit. And so that kind of came with this whole other education. But then myself, outside of No Box, I do identify as an independent artist in many senses. And so I feel like through my learnings in building No Box and talking to people like you, I've been able to build my own kind of pathway. But I would love to talk more about that. Like, where do you start? If you're this independent artist, maybe you're fresh out of school, or maybe you didn't go to school and you've been performing, or maybe you have no background in like professional, and I quote, dance. Like, what are the steps? Like, what do you do? Are you building a plan? Like, do you sit down and write out goals in a journal? Like, I'm so curious. Like, what's the starting point if you had to give that advice?
Ooh, this is such a good conversation. And I love that you shared your story too about your own personal experiences, because I do feel like the creative pathway is not clear. It's not like a doctor where it's a formula you follow. You do medical school and then you have your residency and then blah, blah, blah. And then 10 years of your life and then you're a doctor. It's not clear cut. And that's like the pros and cons of being in the creative industry, right? Like you can harness that and be like, oh yeah, like I can do anything I want. And some people that's like really exciting where you can like create your own pathway to whatever you want to build. But some people it's also debilitating. We're like, oh my gosh, can we just like have some structure so I know? So I think like even though we're all creatives, like some people prefer structure over like the free flow. But I would always say that with any sort of creative, and this is true in business too, but any sort of creative endeavor that you want to start working on. So if let's just say that this person is avatar person that just is straight out of college and just fresh with a dance degree and is like, I don't know what to do. A lot of the work that I do with coaching and consulting my own clients is like, okay, we'll figure out who you are, what you stand for, what kind of impact you want to make, like asking those really deep soul seeking questions, because a lot of the work for creatives is so integrated to our core essence. Like we create art because it's a reflection of us, right? At the end of the day. So I take a lot of my clients through like this process of understanding yourself, defining like what kind of impact you want to make, what you want to do, figuring out like what brings you joy, because that's also for entrepreneurship. Like if it keeps making you excited and happy, then that's like sustainability right there. So once you do all that soul searching and figure out basically the same thing that you would do for an organization, right? Mission, vision, values kind of thing, who you want to serve, what kind of people you want to work with. Let's just kind of stay with the dancer avatar. If you're thinking about teaching classes, right? Because that's a very common pathway. And well, okay, you want to teach classes, but it's also, who do you want to teach? Do you want to teach kids? That's completely different than teaching adults. Do you want to teach people with special needs? Do you want to teach seniors? Maybe this avatar has a really deep personal connection to the elderly or something like that. And so they want to teach those people, and like clarifying all of those mission, vision, values, impact, who you are, what you want to do, how you want to operate is really, really like takes a lot of work, and sometimes takes a lot of time, because sometimes you'll start on something and realize you don't like it, right? And then you shift, right? The power of the creative is creative problem solving. So we keep shifting and reiterating things. But yeah, I don't know necessarily if there's like, if I would say like, oh yeah, this is like the formula you follow for most creatives, but I do think it has to do with a lot of introspection, personal growth, and then figuring out what you want to do and taking steps in that direction. And then once you start taking steps, then you realize the gaps. That's when you're like, oh, I'm going to need to know how to set up an LLC, because now I'm like doing this thing where I'm teaching classes and I'm going to need to like exchange money. And then you're like, okay, what are my resources? There's SBA centers all over the world that offer free mentoring for businesses. There's intensives, or even if your plan as a dancer is like more grandiose, where you're considering having a brick and mortar studio, right? Which is a very common pathway. So you're going to need seed funding. So how do you do that? Start researching grants, small business loans, grants, etc. So I feel like once you have that vision making session with yourself, then it's just a matter of taking steps in that direction. And then you seek out the tools and the resources that you need to get to the next step, basically.
Yeah. And I think, this is certainly could be a plug for somebody to, work with you in that capacity, to
Totally.
not have to go through that visioning alone, because sometimes
Yeah.
it can be really hard. It feels almost like a therapy session with all
Yes.
of that introspection, like you're talking about.
Mhm. Mhm.
For me, I think there's a clear beginning. There's this internal work, whether it be for
Mhm.
yourself or your organization. And then comes the external part, right? The
Mhm.
communicating and pushing out to tell everybody about what you want to do, so they can also come in and do it with you. And so I'm curious if you have any resources or tools that help you communicate out. And obviously, like, we have things like a website or social media presence,
Right.
but I'd love to hear kind of like your thoughts around that. And how do you coach your clients to communicate out while staying true to the in, if that makes
Oh
sense?
man. Yeah. So like I guess as far as resources are concerned, I mean, I think it's all the resources that we use every day, right? I mean, like this world that we're in, what is this world? Like technology is crazy. Like we have can interface, like, yeah, literally we were just on a call earlier interfacing with people in Mexico and Korea all in one room. So like technology has made it easy to have people be in front of others at very low lift, like low energy, right? So LinkedIn, all the social media platforms, TikTok, Instagram, even just, yeah, having a digital presence online through a website, like all of these are options to be able to, yeah, once you do the work to figure out like, okay, if I'm a business, what I'm actually selling, basically. That those are all ways that you could like put yourself out there, right? And if you're a visual artist too, or you're a multidisciplinary artist, that maybe it's not just dance that you do, but you create things with your hands, then you'll probably want like an online store. And there's so many platforms with that, right? But to like optimize how you show up in those spaces, I think it really just comes back to being authentic to yourself. Or also, I will say this, like everyone is always changing and evolving. So, like this internal work of mission, vision, values, all this introspection, like you're probably going to change. Let's be real. But being okay with that. And I think that's something that's unique to like business people are like, I have a business plan to like own a franchise, and like it's pretty much like done for you. But with artists, like, let's be real, like we are heart-led people. I think like we need to be okay with the fact that we're going to keep constantly evolving and changing, because that's just the nature of being a human. So with that said, okay, you do all this work to like figure out your mission values and know who you are. So then you start showing up in those spaces based on that authenticity, based on what connections you've already made and what you've already declared for yourself. And I think that's the only way to remain true or have it remain sustainable for you, because then you can like, it's easy to get caught up in the granularities of, if I post this way, the algorithms will like me more. And you can keep trying to use strategy to figure out the algorithms, or wait with bated breath, like what Instagram's going to do next. But I think like, I personally don't think that's worth the energy. If you just keep aligning your marketing, if you will, your messaging around who you are and just being consistent with that, I think that's going to have so much more impact than being strategic about it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense. And I think I love your insight on kind of this constant reiteration. I think that's
Mm,
what's so exciting about being in a creative industry, is that you kind of have permission to
yes.
constantly reiterate and change and evolve. And especially now with the pace of change is different,
Yeah.
because of technology, which is really exciting, but can
Yeah.
also be debilitating at times,
Mhm.
because you feel like you're constantly playing catch up, or I certainly
Mhm.
feel like that sometimes. And so
Mhm.
you talk about like the importance of like communicating,
Mhm.
your authentic self, if you will.
Mhm.
I'm wondering if you have like really clear tips and strategies on how to do that in a way that actually lands with real people. And
Mhm.
what I mean by that is like, with social media specifically, it's like we don't have any control. Whereas with like our website or something like that, you really own the platform. And so you
Right.
own how your message is being shared and where it's
Yeah.
being shared, and even like an email newsletter too. That's like another example. So I'm curious, like, what are ways that you're coaching your clients, or you're thinking about like how to share your message and what kind of content you're creating?
Mhm.
Because I do think there is some, consideration to strategy in terms of making sure, like, if you're selling tickets for an event, obviously you want people to freaking show up. And so I'm just
Yeah.
kind of curious, like, how are you thinking about sharing content? And are there things that you find like work really well, or things that you're like, this is such a waste of time? Don't do it.
Mhm, mhm. I don't know if I necessarily crack the code on like what's the most like clickbait, like, ooh, I want to watch and listen to this. But I think there's something to be said about consistency. I'll kind of be like full disclosure here, but I haven't really posted on socials in a really long time. And that was kind of like what I was using as like my calling card. Like even like going to networking events, I'm like, I don't have a business card. Here's my Instagram. And so I was kind of like relying heavily on Instagram to just kind of like show people what I do. And I was using it initially, like I've gone through so many iterations with Instagram where I was like, okay, I even had a VA who was like, virtual assistant who was pushing things for me because I was like, I don't want to be the one doing it anymore. And then I also would like challenge myself personally to post every single day or post as many times. And so there was definitely parts of my Instagram that was like that. And I was just pushing out whatever. I will say I wasn't the best at metrics, but I did figure out looking at my old posts, like what time of day was good and who kind of my people were, which was really interesting. If you haven't done that, you should definitely like look at your insights in your Instagram just to see. So I've kind of used that as guidance, and I probably could optimize that further. But at this point, yeah, I've made a lot of posts and I've said a lot of things on Instagram, and also have like gained insights and tips from other people that are like social media wizards and stuff. And I've tried to compile all of that But with that said, it's interesting because I don't know if it's like this is not an intentional change in strategy, but the most recent posts have just all been collab posts that I'm a part of projects and they're promoting. So I will collab post with them, but I'm still getting like traction and people reaching out to me, even though I myself am not like pushing out, pushing myself out there. And so that's been really interesting because that I basically am still like getting inquiries from clients, like, and I'm not even advertising that I'm like taking clients, like I'm doing so many other projects. And so it's interesting what like naturally just keeps happening. Like if you just keep showing up in a manner that you are still top of mind, and then people can associate like your earlier messaging to what you're doing now. I think like consistency kind of reigns supreme with just being like, I'm just, I'm here. I'm here. So yeah, tips and tricks as far as like how to optimize the messaging. Was that kind of the question?
Yeah, it's great. And I love kind of hearing your own experience right now
Yeah.
with Instagram. I think that so many of us can relate to that. I know myself personally, I feel like I used to do the same thing, like, I will post all the time and this and that. And then it's just like, oh my gosh, like I have enough jobs.
Yeah.
Like be my job too. And even with
Yeah.
No Box, we've tried to be a little bit more clear and intentional about, just
Mhm.
building hype around events or open calls and the podcast,
Mhm.
things that are happening, and less just consistent posting every single day for no reason, really.
Yeah.
So I think that's certainly interesting and applicable, I'm sure, to so many of us as we're navigating this. And I'm curious too, are there other technological innovations, tools like AI that you're interested in? I would love to know your thoughts on newer things like
Yeah.
AI and VR. And you're an educator too, so I'm so curious. Are you seeing what's happening affect dance in the classroom, dance on the stage, dance online? I would just love to hear your insights.
Oh man. Oh, this is a juicy left turn. But I want to say one more thing about like social media posting and kind of like, I don't want to say strategy because that makes it feel like it's like all left brain. But I think there's also a question that you want to ask when you are posting, like, is it of value? It's kind
Mhm.
of like the most simple thing, because if it's kind of like a greater question, or I guess situation or something, about the state that we're in right now, where there's just like a lot of content. There's a lot of people posting, there's a lot of voices, there's a lot of noise out there. And I think like at the end of the day, if you can be proud of what you're putting out there as far as like adding value and not just contributing to noise, I think that'll also feel good and that'll resonate. Like energetics are a big thing. And so I think making sure that you're authentically showing up and your intention is to add value instead of just be up adding anything and whatever just because I was told to, that's going to make so much more of an impact than just, yeah, sticking to a plan of I must post every day kind of thing. So, anyways, I will put a pin in that.
No, I love that.
So,
I'm glad that you mentioned that. I think
yeah,
that comment on adding value can be such a helpful reminder and take some pressure off of all of us,
yes.
like who feel the need to push out the messaging. But okay, is it
Mhm.
adding value what we're actually sharing? Is it in a way that can help our community in some
That's it.
capacity?
Yeah. Yeah.
I
I agree.
appreciate that.
Yeah. Thank you. But
Yeah, let's get into the juicy segment now.
this is so juicy. I don't even know where to start. Speaking from my experience, I know there's like two trains of thought with AI. Some people are very scared of it. Some people, especially creatives, are like, it's going to take over our jobs. It's going to ruin creativity. I'm not in that camp. I'm in the camp of, I'm very interested in this new technology. And I also feel like we have a responsibility over this emerging technology to contribute to it by engaging with it so that it is basically programmed to be what we want it to be. I mean, I know there's probably a lot of other layers there, but just from a creative standpoint, I'm like, this is exciting. This is interesting. I want it to remain equitable. I want it to remain accessible. And I am curious to see what it can do, but I don't think it'll ever replace a human as far as like creativity, innovation, connection. I'm in this space where I love using AI with discretion. Even in my encouragement of students to use AI, I say, use discretion, right? It's still a tool, it's not the end all be all. And I allow them in some of my assignments to specifically use AI, and then they're able to see that it's not always accurate, and it's spitting out some weird stuff.
I
But I
love
think
that.
that,
I'm in a similar camp as you. When we first started this podcast, a lot of our conversations were about social media because it was still relatively new in how it was impacting the dance world. And this was even before TikTok and things like that. And so it's really interesting to almost see like the same patterns kind of happen again,
yeah.
but with this new technology, like people
Mhm.
are like freaking out about social media and how it's going to affect dance and it's going to take people out of the theater
Yeah.
and things like that. And then it's kind of like those same concerns are coming up. But
Mhm.
again, we're kind of reminded no, it's just another tool. It's how we use it that's
Mhm.
so important. And so I think that's why it's really cool to have conversations with people like you is to
Mhm.
learn how you're actually using this tool
Mhm.
in exciting and inspiring ways and kind of
Mhm.
setting limits to how you use this tool, whether it
Yeah.
be in the classroom or for creating work. So I'd love to hear more about like specific ways that you're using it in the classroom because a lot of
Yeah.
our listeners are educators. And I think that this
Yeah.
might be useful for them and give some ideas on you don't have to like completely shut it down, but how can you bring it in to what you're doing and teach your students how to engage with these tools in healthy, I guess, for lack of a better word, ways. This is Dance Behind the Screen, where technology, strategy, and creativity collide.
Yeah. So I teach at University of North Texas as an adjunct, and they had an AI symposium, like, I don't know, maybe like year ago. And I signed up because I wanted anything that I don't know about, I want to know more of. I'm like a forever student. And that really like helped create some frameworks around just even talking about the ethics of it, but also like I walked away with like specific platforms that I was like, "Oh, I want to tap into these more, etc." And not only just as an educator, but also for a creative entrepreneur. So there's kind of like two tracks that I kind of want to talk about, right?
Yeah, I would
In
love
my
to hear
entrepreneur life.
what the platforms are too.
Yeah. So entrepreneur life and educator life. So educator life, I definitely create this like understanding from day one in my classrooms where I'm like, look, I know you're using AI. So first of all, if we're going to use it, let's just be open about it and please cite it as a source because I make my students cite an APA whenever they're using external sources. So at least like just be honest with me that you're using it. And it's like a rough guideline, but I do say like if they're writing papers or something, then I at least want 70% to be your content or generated from you. But I do think the assignments that I create still, it's not like a plug and play assignment where they're just asked to write about whatever topic that they can just like pump into AI and it spits something out. It's like based on something you experience in person that they have to reflect on. So I've kind of put that safeguard. It might be difficult for other educators that have like, yeah, maybe they need to like talk about a specific topic that's more general versus like a personal reflection. But anyway, so full disclosure, right? That you're using AI. So tell me that you're using it and cite it as a source. I teach a class called Stress Reduction Through Movement, which really has to do around kind of reinforcing the mind body connection. We do a whole span of different modalities, a lot with like Eastern philosophies and influences because it's not as represented. And so we're doing things like yoga, Pilates, meditation, breath work, mindful walking, all these things. And To supplement that, we do a lot of research, and we will dig into the neuroscience and resources that are there now that show how awesome all these modalities are. And then on top of that, we also reflect. So every single week, my students will handwrite journal entries about their reflections. And I encourage them to write about what we do in class, but also, like, if you just want to write about whatever happens in your life, you can. So basically, they've accumulated like 16 weeks of journal entries. And so at the end of it, what I do is I ask them to look back at all their entries using AI to see what they've been talking about and to like analyze their themselves throughout the term, their growth, their subconscious hurdles, all this stuff. So what I use is a platform called Notebook LM, which is a Google product, and you have to sign up with your Gmail account. And then we basically upload screenshots of all of their handwritten journal entries, and we ask Google to basically like derive themes. It'll create like a mind map of what it sees as topics and organizes it in a super logical way. It's so creepy, but there's a podcast that's generated from the content. And so these students are listening to these two avatars talking about their life when they went to get ice cream with their roommate and, blah, blah, blah. And so that's really interesting. So it's really that program is closed source. So it's just whatever you put into it is what it pulls from. But then I add the layer of using ChatGPT, which I love ChatGPT. There's also another AI called Claude, Claude, which is a little bit more, has a little more finesse to it. I don't know how to say it. Like the interface is like prettier. I think it's like more conducive to creatives because what I heard is that I guess like a team from ChatGPT were like, we're going to create our own thing. So it's supposed to be a little more creative friendly. But then I asked them to I asked them to create like a profile of this person, of the authors of these entries in Notebook LM. And then I asked them to copy paste it into ChatGPT. And then that's where it gets fun, where you're like, what kind of subconscious hurdles? What kind of messages like is my self-talk? Or like, just like asking all these psychoanalytical questions. And I encourage them to go as deep as they want or not. I give them ideas of prompts because I think in the world of AI, you want to like be clever about your prompts. And that's kind of how you get to the juicy bits. But it's really just for them to like play around with. I think I haven't done this yet myself as far as like psychoanalyzing myself, but I've definitely have friends that are like, yeah, we use it when my partner and I are having arguments, and we basically are like, this is what we're arguing about. Can you help us figure out like how to talk to each other, knowing that this is our personality types and how we like to communicate and our subconscious hurdles and all this stuff.
Funny, I think there's like, I read it somewhere, I can't remember. I'll cite it in the show notes, but like, I guess ChatGPT is now like the new therapist or something. So I think it's certainly insightful. And I love the ways that you're using it in the classroom. It's really cool. And it made me think of how that can probably relate to your coaching and your entrepreneurship too, especially in that like internal reflection period where you're trying to, it's like you can kind of have a conversation with yourself. Yeah, when it comes to AI and like help you really find the right languaging for your messaging.
Yeah.
And I'd love for you to share more too, like how are you using AI for entrepreneurship?
Yeah. For in my own business, like I use AI to help me generate content or refine content that I have like content ideas. And I've also even started using it because I'm kind of in a shift right now, transitioning to like a different business plan with some collaborators and business partners. And so we're actually using it as kind of like a business consultant, honestly.
Nice.
We're like, okay, this is how we think that we have this idea, this business idea. So how can we create this to be like a sustainable business where, this is what we want as an output. Like we want to generate this amount of income in this amount of time. And knowing that our limitations are time, basically, at this point, because we're both moms, so like really giving enough detail to the technology and then asking it the right questions to help us, help guide us. And honestly, like for creatives, it's really helpful to get out of our own brain because in our
Mhm.
heads, like an idea is amazing, but then having something just tell you that, like, have you thought about it a bit? Have you thought about it like this? Then it's like, oh, that's helpful.
Are there certain prompts that you find really useful when you're working with AI?
I think I, for me, it is about like a conversation. So, like, whenever I'm like starting a new chat with ChatGPT, like, I will just spit out whatever comes to mind first.
Mhm.
Then I do think the more that you use it, it starts to know you, first of all, but also like, well, I sometimes want it to be a conversation in the sense I'm processing as I am listening to it spit things back to me. And I'm also like an external processor myself. So sometimes I'll just be
Mm,
like, blah, 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 blah. So I think there is an art and a strategy to creating a perfect prompt that, like, if you say this, then you're going to get the answer. It's going to be so close to like
mhm,
100%. But for me, I enjoy this process of going back and forth. So
mhm,
I don't think it's necessarily as important for me to be like, this is the most perfect prompt ever.
mm. Yeah, with AI rather than looking for the solution necessarily
Right.
in
Right.
one return.
Yeah. Yeah. But it depends, right? On like who the person is. Like maybe some
Mhm,
people are like, I need an answer. So I'm going
mhm.
to give everything to this one prompt.
I mean,
But
I am really enjoying this conversation and time I feel like is flying by. I would love to have you back on again to kind of dive deeper into some of these different avenues. I feel like there's so many different things we could talk about. But
yeah.
before we get into like our final segment, is there anything that we haven't talked about today that you really want to share with our listeners?
So that's a good question. Oh my gosh, you're like leaving me just open ended. Obviously, like I would love to like talk about the initiatives that I'm putting forward, just
Yeah,
kind of
please.
because of what they stand for. So, yeah, for like the greater arts community. And I know like the things that I'm working on right now are very specific to Dallas, but I think like just telling people that this exists, I think will continue to like create seeds of change, which I honestly like my speaking of mission, vision, values, like I want to see the arts ecosystem change in a way that artists are more empowered and owning their value and being able to have enough confidence to show up in spaces and places where decisions are made in the government, in cities, like we're in rooms with bankers and lawyers and high profile, wealth managers and et cetera, et
And we
cetera.
definitely align with that. And I think it's important to
Yes.
create space to have conversations around these ideas and the importance of them. And that's why we do offer this podcast for free on YouTube
Yeah.
as well, because I think just to have the platform to share out loud what's important to you and how people can be a part of it is extremely important. So please tell us, share.
Yes.
How can
Oh
we
my,
join?
I'm a dancer through and through, so I don't think I'll ever stop dancing, but I've definitely transitioned into this world of advocacy, thought leadership, community building. One of the things that I'm working on right now, I am the chair of Art Boost Dallas, which is an arts entrepreneurship conference for creatives of all disciplines from visual to performing. It's really addressing that gap where artists are trained in their technique and their craft, but they don't quite have the business skills, the hard skills, or the mindset, honestly, to kind of really make that true for them in their entrepreneurial path. So it's really a conference that's geared to serve artists in that way. We're not necessarily trying to just teach business to artists, but we're trying to meet them where they're at, understand that we also learn differently. We also might want to rebrand how we use jargon, business jargon as well. But regardless, it's a day and a half conference, really focusing on the pain points of artists. We are pleased to really curate this year's programming from hearing from our community. We took some surveys, we had focus groups to really understand what artists' needs are. And I feel like we're doing a pretty good job addressing it this year. So it's happening next month. So if you are a local, come through June 27th and 28th. But we have workshop sessions. You can walk away with something practical accomplished. For example, we have a social media session where you can create your social media plan in one day. So that's really exciting. And we'll be talking about AI. And then
If you
also,
have this episode's going to be coming out later, so it'll be
great.
after the conference, but we're
All right,
happy to promote it on our channels or even in our newsletter.
Yes, because also like for me, Art Boost, it is a conference, one-off conference, but I would love to see it keep building into a multi-touch point offering to the artist community so that it continues to like give value, whether it be through a one-off intensive 1 month or a workshop, another month, or maybe it's a masterclass. So be on the lookout, y'all. And also I encourage whoever's listening to like start at least creating spaces of this type in your cities and communities, because I think the more that also artists come together and start becoming more strategic about how they want to show up and how they want to connect and collaborate, I think that's really important. Because, yeah, freelance artistry is lonely and we get stuck in our ways, but we need to start owning the fact that we have a really big impact on our community and we need to be smart about that. So,
How do you say no to the box and yes to the future of dance?
we kind of discussed it, right? As far as there's no straightforward pathway to dance and creative entrepreneurship. So like you make it whatever you want. And I have chosen to revel in that. And I'm just like having fun with my life, making it whatever I want it to be. So I feel like my saying yes to the future of dance is just continuing to do the work that I do with myself for myself and like hopefully I'm inspiring other people to embrace that as well and to know how much power and value you have as an artist. If I could just be like, you are amazing artist. Your voice and message needs to be heard. So own that ish. And then just start using a little bit of business strategy to like optimize that impact. Yes to dance.
I love it. Thank you for all the work that you do, not only just in Dallas, but for the field at large. It's exciting to just kind of see the trickle down effect as you continue being so involved in our community.
Oh, I'm so glad we connected too.
It's so great to have you on our show.
Flashboard.
And now we have our Flashboard segment. This is where we ask all our guests to answer 4 questions in a flash, fast as possible. Are you ready?
I'll try.
If you had to recommend a resource to our audience, what would it be?
I just read this book called 15 Commitments of Conscious Leadership. And as a creative entrepreneur, you are a leader. Look that up.
What was the first dance you saw?
One of the first dances I saw was a dinner theater show when I was on a school trip. And I thought it was so fun. And I think it was my first exposure to like theater proper. Yeah.
How do you think social media has a positive influence on the dance world? Yes or no?
Can I answer yes and no?
What's your favorite social media platform?
Oh, Instagram.
I love it. Well, Emi, thank you again so much for coming on our show. And to our listeners, we hope today's episode inspired you to think about how art and business can work together to support your growth as a creative. As always, stay connected with us at KNOWBOX Dance and keep dancing behind the screen. From No Box Dance, I'm Martheya. Stay curious, stay creative, and keep moving forward.
Thanks for taking your time to tune into Dance Behind the Screen, a bi-monthly interview series where we go behind the screen to question process, product, and social media. Be sure to follow us on social media at KNOWBox Dance. See you next time and don't forget to say no to the box.